To the United States now, where Congress has held its first hearing on UFOs for half a century. It's part of a government effort to be more transparent about unexplained military sightings in the sky, which America has deemed a potential national security threat. And while there is still no confirmation of extraterrestrial life, it's hoped the public hearings will lead to better intelligence gathering in science. Well, joining me now is Avi Loeb, the head of the Galileo project at the Harvard Astronomy Department. Avi, it is a fascinating day up there on Capitol Hill where Congress is holding its first UFO hearing in half a century. What's been most interesting to you so far?
Well, first, that the government is discussing seriously this subject. And of course, the Congress is interested from a perspective of national security. I'm interested in it from a perspective of a scientist. And these are the two possible interpretations of the objects that were reported. They could either be human-made, in which case they represent technologies that the intelligence agencies in the US do not recognize, or it may be equipment from another planet somewhere else. And of course, that would be a scientific matter because it doesn't adhere to national borders and it would impact humanity as a whole.
And I think that's what everyone wants to know. Are there extraterrestrials out there? And you're saying it's possible.
It is possible, and we should be guided by evidence, not by prejudice. It's not a philosophical question. We just need high-resolution imaging, or we need to get our hands on material from these objects. And we can do both in principle using the tools of science. And just like any other scientific inquiry, we just need to build better instruments and monitor the sky. That's the Galileo project that I'm leading, which is aiming at identifying objects in the sky using new telescope systems. I'm actually planning an expedition to Papua New Guinea where we would scoop the ocean floor for the fragments left over from the first interstellar meteor that was confirmed by the US government just last month. And so altogether, we can either put our hands on material from objects that came from outside the solar system or study them in more detail and just check if they have a label on them, made on exoplanet Y.
But that's what's so exciting, isn't it? For the first time, the Defense Department is putting this information out there because it has been shrouded in secrecy.
Yeah, that is very significant. I think it's simply the accumulation of data that the government cannot ignore. Now, there are other adults in the room, and they are in academia. They still ridicule the subject, push back, and that's not part of the mainstream. I think that should change, because if the government is curious about the nature of these unusual objects, it has data that we haven't seen. Most of it is classified, the best quality data. And the public is so excited about it. Scientists cannot just ignore this question. And it's of great importance for the future of humanity if we find out that there is a smarter kid on our cosmic block.
Yes, well, UFOs have been stigmatised and ridiculed for so long, which hasn't really encouraged that sort of proper scientific investigation, has it?
Yeah, it may well be a mixed bag in the sense that many of the objects might be human-made or natural. But my point is, even if one is of extraterrestrial technological origin, that could change the future of humanity. So we really need to make sure that we understand each and every object, and we can do that by collecting the highest quality data possible. As of now, the data was anecdotal. Some military personnel saw things that they don't fully understand. And that's not standing up to the standards of science. We really need to use the very best instruments that we have full control over, that we fully understand, in collecting the best data. And it's a fishing expedition. And whatever we find would be helpful to the conversation, because even if we find that all of the fish we collect are relatively boring, you know, we cleared up the fog. Let's get rid of the unidentified from our lexicon and move on.
Avi Loeb, it is exciting work. We can't wait to hear what you find. Thanks so much for joining us on 8 o'clock.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.